Welcome to video podcast number 49. Now, I always try to get away from predicting the length of my videos, but I'm going to go ahead with one of my risky predictions. I guarantee this video will be less than an hour, and I'm actually shooting for it to be less than a half hour. Now, this is not the patreon.com exclusive video that I promised for today. I'm getting ready to do that probably in 2 or 3 hours. That's going to center around talking to women when they're with at least one other girlfriend, if not more. That's what my Patreon exclusive video is going to talk about, is talking to women. Because I always talk about opening up a conversation with a woman individually, one-on-one. But a lot of my clients tend to ask me questions about opening a conversation with a woman if she's with at least one girlfriend, if not 2, 3, 4 girlfriends. So that's what's going to be my patreon.com exclusive video. And like I said, I'll be recording that in probably about roughly 2 to 3 hours after I run a couple of errands. But this video, as you can imagine, if it's free for the general public, you know what it is. It's going to be some degree of a rant, a ramble, an admonishment, or related to feedback from listeners and or addressing haters and critics. So make a mental note of that, if not a written note of that. Anytime I do a free video, that's free for the general public, is going to be inclusive of some content that's going to be representative of a rant, a ramble, an admonishment, or a discussion about feedback from listeners and or addressing haters and critics. Here's the thing I want to quickly address in this one. Now, I had a guy in I think it was my very last video, the one I did Tuesday. I got a lot of compliments on that video. Most of my comments, people in my comment section usually write complimentary stuff. But you know, I got a few critics that come in. As long as they don't say anything that's too crazy, I usually allow the comment to remain in my comment section. I don't immediately delete comments simply because somebody says something critical to me or disagrees with something I say. Now, if you come in my comment section saying something that I think is just crazy, or something that has no relation to the contents of the video, then there's at least a 50% chance, if not greater, I'm going to delete it. But, or you blatantly insult one of my other commenters, that's an immediate deletion. If you come in my comment section below, and you say something insulting or blatantly disrespectful to one of my other commenters, your shit's gonna get deleted. Trust me on that. I don't play that shit. Like some YouTube hosts, they allow that shit. They allow some commenters to blatantly disrespect and insult other commenters. I don't allow that shit. I would allow you to, in some cases, insult me more than I will allow you to insult one of my other commenters. Like, for example, I've had 3 or 4 instances where a male commenter disrespected or insulted a female commenter of mine. I don't allow that shit, man. Don't ever come in my comment section blatantly disrespecting or insulting another commenter. That is my #1 grounds for your comment being deleted, and in some cases I will ban you. I don't play that shit, man. I don't play that shit. Like I said, you got a better chance of getting away with insulting me and harshly criticizing me than insulting another commenter. I do not play that. Do not play that at all. All my other relevant and important links in my description section. I had somebody come in my comment section, and their comments is not in front of me, so I'm going to be paraphrasing them. But this person said, in essence, Alan, well, there's a few comments I'm going to address. There's 2 or 3 comments I'm going to address. But the first one. Alan, you always criticize men for whining and complaining about women But you're part of the reason why we whine and complain about women. Because you've exposed how, again, these are not his exact words, so I'm paraphrasing, but he basically was like, you have exposed through your own boasting that women ain't about shit. Like, you boast about fucking other men's wives, other men's fiancés, other men's girlfriends. Well, if you're one of those men that ended up dating or marrying one of those women that you fucked just like she was a hoe, and we later find out about it, why wouldn't we be on YouTube whining and complaining about it? So you contribute. And you know what? In this guy's partial defense, remember that video? I can't remember the number of it. But there was a video I did a long time ago, one of my early videos. It was the very first video where I got kind of emotional, for lack of a better word. Yeah, I want to say this was almost the very first video that I recall getting somewhat emotional. Because I had a bunch of guys that had written me both publicly and privately that actually accused me of destroying the concept of true love. I had at least 6, 7, 8 guys write me, if not more, that wrote me when a couple months after I first got on YouTube, that wrote me and said, Alan, with all due respect to you, you're one of the guys that is destroying the concept of true love in this society, because a lot of the women that we look at as long-term girlfriend material or wife material, you get to those women first and you just treat them like sluts. And you just fuck them for a few days, have them suck your dick for a few weeks, and then you discard them like yesterday's tissue. And these are women that we might be looking at as long-term girlfriend material or wife material. But who wants a woman to be their wife or long-term girlfriend when we know a guy like you has just treated this woman like a 2-bit slut? Why do I always use the phrase, wake up? Why do I always use the phrase, wake up? If there's one type of woman that I would dare any of my listeners or viewers to say that I have not warned you about, 2 types of women actually, at bare minimum, what's the 2 types of women I always give you a cautionary warning about? Whether it be through my books, my articles, freelance articles, my audio podcast, my video podcast, at bare minimum, what's the 2 types of women that I always give you warning about? If no other woman, is women who are sexually duplicitous, wholesome pretender and erotic hypocrite types. Sexually duplicitous, wholesome pretender, and erotic hypocrite types. And number 2, women who are manipulative time wasters. Just highly manipulative type women. Manipulative time. There's a few other women I've talked about in various articles, my books, my audio podcast, my video podcast. But at bare minimum, starting with my 1999 ebook, if there's 2 women I've always talked about, giving you what I would call a cautionary warning about, is the fact, the 2 characteristics about women I always highlight is the fact that there are a high percentage of women in society that are sexually duplicitous and a high percentage of women that are highly manipulative. Amen. I didn't create women. Don't blame me for how women are. Don't blame me for how women are. I didn't create women. I did not instill them with the DNA they have and the psychological wiring that they have. Don't put that on me. And that's when I got kind of emotional in that very first video. That video where I did it for the first time, I got a little emotional because that was my main response. I was like, you guys are almost treating me like I'm God and I created woman, but I created this flawed individual. Don't blame me because of women's flaws. If anything, give me credit for pointing them out. Yeah, man, here's a simple reality. And again, it goes back to Big Mike from Mac City Limits. When we were doing an interview, and he said, some men got it like that, and some men don't. I've said this numerous times. This is why I have that delineation between alpha males and beta males. This is at least half the reason why I have the delineation between alpha males and beta males, man. Women ain't gonna, I've said this already 2 billion trillion times, but I'm going to say it yet again. If a woman perceives you as a beta male, she's not going to ever behave towards you the exact same way as she does a womanizing alpha male. Period. End of story. End of story. I don't even have to get long-winded or detailed about that. End of story, man. If a woman perceives you as being an easy to get along with and or financially generous beta male type, she is never going to behave towards you in the exact same manner that she behaves towards a man who she perceives to be a very confident, erotically dominant, womanizing alpha male type. Period. Period. What does that mean in practical terms? It means that me and another guy can meet a woman named Tiffany Johnson. Let's call the other guy Brian. Brian can meet Tiffany Johnson in the month of March 2017, and I can meet Tiffany Johnson in the month of March 2017. And with Brian, Tiffany will say, well, you gotta take a few weeks, a few months to get to know me before we ever do anything physical. You gotta take me out to dinner. You gotta take me out to lunch. You gotta spend time with me in the park. You gotta take me to the museum. You're gonna have to meet my brothers. You're gonna have to meet my father. And that's before I even give you a tongue kiss, let alone let you have sex with me. That's what you got to do. So if you're not willing to do that, I don't want anything to do with you. That's what she might tell Brian. But when Tiffany is dealing with me, I have her playing with a pussy on the phone in the first conversation. And the next time we hook up in person, she's sucking my dick on her knees, sucking my dick, and I'm fucking her. Does that mean Tiffany's a bad woman? Not necessarily. It means that she don't have the same reaction to Brian that she has to me. She just don't. I don't really look at that. Some men look at that as a good versus bad thing. I look at it as, you know, that old phrase that goes around a lot these days. It is what it is. It is what it is. It's just like the earth. The earth, at some point of the day, the sun is shining on one part of the earth, whereas somewhere else on earth it's nighttime. Like right now, it's daytime where I am. At some point, at somewhere else on the earth, it's nighttime. It's night. It's dark. Is that a good versus bad thing? No, it is what it is. It is what it is. That's where that phrase comes from. That means it's neither necessarily good or necessarily bad. It just is what it is. That's how I look at women who are sexually duplicitous. I don't really per se look at women who are sexually duplicitous as bad women as much as I look at it as it is what it is, man. Women are not going to respond to all men the same way. Period. Now, you can blame me for that. You can blame women for that. But that's just the fucking flat out truth. Women are not going to react and respond to men the exact same fucking way. And see, this relates plain and simply to why you have a lot of men whining and complaining about women's behavior. You know who does the most, generally speaking, the most whining and complaining about women's behavior? Do you think it's the Alan Roger Currie types or the Brian types of the world? Let's be real about that shit. Let's be real. Do you think it's the Alan Roger Currie types? Or do you think it's the Brian types of the world? That's a no-brainer. And the thing about it, I wouldn't even say this is something that just emerged with the advent of the internet. I think it's become more exacerbated since the advent of the internet. But this has been going on for years, decades, if not centuries, man. I'll give you an example. When I was in college in the 80s, there was no internet, but I mentioned on a couple other video podcasts. Even back in the 80s, man, there were guys I would run across on campus. Not only black guys, but white guys too, who would always be bitching about women. It's just that they didn't have no audio podcast or no YouTube channel to announce their criticisms to the world. But trust me, it ain't like men who whine and complain about women just came into play since the internet came about or social media came about. Back in the 1980s, man, I mentioned in one of my early video podcasts, I knew at least a small percentage of guys that were like that back then. Why? Because when we were, like, I was in a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. Yo. I'm sorry, I got distracted by I need to find a way. I can't turn my notifications off. And sometimes as I'm talking, my notifications, like my YouTube notifications, my Facebook notifications, my Twitter notifications, my LinkedIn notifications, and whatever other notifications will pop up. So anytime I'm talking, and then all of a sudden you see me look down to the right bottom corner of my computer, like this, that means I'm having a bunch of notifications popping up, telling me one thing or another. Okay, like I was in a fraternity in college. And I would say next to being a really superstar athlete on campus, the next best thing you could be on a college campus is a popular fraternity guy. That's probably the second most thing you can be on in terms of having influence with women, is to be a fraternity guy. Matter of fact, since I mentioned the word influence, time out. I'm going to do a little segue and then I'm going to come back to this. And this relates to men whining and complaining. If you remember that the very first video I did where I criticized men and brothers in particular, black men in particular, for whining and complaining. What did I say, if you remember? If you remember. Now, it's been a while, but what did you say? Well, first of all, my favorite flavor. Oh, guess what I found out? I got some bad news for you guys. Well, it ain't for you guys because it ain't going to affect your life, but I should say bad news for me. I had a doctor's appointment yesterday, and she actually told me I got to cut back on vitamin water zero, even though it has no sugar. She said this is good in terms of my my type 2 diabetes that I have, that I'm in the process of trying to reverse. She gave me a lot of high marks. She said I've lost a significant amount of weight. Most of my vitals are looking good. My A1C reading, which is your blood sugar reading, was really good. Even though I stopped using my medicine, metformin. Remember, I had the hashtag, fuck metformin. Fuck metformin. I ain't taking that shit again. It's making my hair fall out and making my dick stop being virile. Shit. Fuck that shit. But anyway, she was surprised at how well my diabetes rating was, considering the fact that I did, on my own, stop taking metformin, which she wasn't too happy about. But anyway, to get to the point. So for diabetes purposes, she has no problem with me drinking. But here's the thing. And I deep down, I knew this already. I actually had a friend I went to college with who died because, at least partially because, his doctor said he didn't drink enough water. He was always drinking soda pop and juices and shit, but he rarely drank just regular plain water. And I don't know if you guys know, but in case you don't, and particularly you younger guys, if you don't drink enough water, just regular plain water, not any type of flavored water or soda pop or juices, but just regular plain water, it, over a period of time, it has a negative effect on your kidneys, man. It has a negative effect on how your kidneys work. That's why a lot of men and women, as they get older, tend to experience kidney failure. Kidney failure comes from, in part, because you didn't drink enough water in your life. So keep that in mind. You should always drink a lot of just regular, plain, either tap water, if you live in an area that has good tap water, or bottled water. You should always drink a lot of just plain water. And that's what my doctor implored me to do. She said, Alan, don't drink exclusively vitamin water zero. It's all right for you for that to be maybe 1/3 to 1/2 of what you drink in a day. But she said at least 1/2 to 2/3 of what you should be drinking is just regular, plain bottled water. So you might see me holding up a bottle of just regular water in the future, but excuse me. Now, I was talking about the very first time I admonished guys for doing whining and complaining. What did I say, among other things? If you go back to that I think it was in early to mid-June. Yeah, I want to say it was in early to mid-June when I did my very first video where I admonished guys for whining and complaining about women. And one simple statement I said is, I said, among other things, I said, man, that shit ain't sexy, man. And I'm real about that. It ain't sexy, man. I don't know any woman that would be turned on by listening to a guy whining and complaining about their behavior. Why not? Why not? Why would that be a potential turnoff to a lot of women if you're doing a lot of whining and complaining about women's behavior? If you've been familiar with me for a while, what's one of the #1 self-help books that I've promoted real heavily over the years? There's a lot of self-help books that I'm a fan of. But there's at least one in particular matter of fact, I would rank it no lower than my #2 favorite self-help book of all time. If not #1. It could be #1, but I'd say it's no lower than #2. I would almost say there's 2 books that are tied for #1 for me under the category of self-help books. One is a really thin book. It's not even thick. It's called As a Man Thinketh, So Is He by James Allen. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. If you've never read that book, or if you're not familiar with that book, I would highly recommend it to you. That's a great book. That's a great book. As a Man Thinketh. Basically, in a nutshell, the essence of that book is Your beliefs and attitudes is going to determine how you function in life, how you operate in life. For example, if I had to use women as an example, if you firmly believe all women ain't shit, all women are bitches, then that's going to be, your life is going to reflect that. That's what basically James Allen says in that book. If that's your firm belief and that's your firm attitude, your life is going to reflect that. Like, for example, even if you were to meet a quality woman, you wouldn't be able to recognize her because your belief system says all women ain't shit. So even if you ran across a woman that had impeccable moral character or impeccable integrity and was just overall a quality woman, you're not going to recognize that woman because your belief system is telling you all women ain't shit. It's just like, I tell guys this to do with confidence. If you go to every social event saying, I'm never going to get laid with women, I know for a fact I'm never going to get laid with women. Well, guess what? You're right. You're right. You're right. Because that's your belief system. If you constantly tell yourself, oh, I'm never going to get laid when I go out with my boys. When I go to a party or a nightclub or other social event, I'm never going to get laid. Guess what? You're right. So even if you ran across a woman who was potentially willing to give you some pussy, you ain't going to recognize it because your belief system has already determined your destiny, how your life is going to unfold. So that's the essence of that book, As a Man Thinketh, So Is He. See, like me, man, everywhere I go, I believe I'm going to get my dick sucked, even when it doesn't happen. That's my firm belief, man. Everywhere I go, I say in my mind, I know one woman in this social event is going to suck my dick. And guess what? I've gotten my dick sucked quite a few times. Because that's my belief system. I have a different belief system than most guys. And that's why I've had the sexual success I've had with women. Because my belief system is totally different. I believe I can seduce any woman. Even realistically, when I know deep down, I can't seduce anyone. But that's my confident belief system. I believe if a woman gives me the opportunity to spend at least 2 to 3 minutes talking dirty to her, I believe I can get any woman's pussy wet. Any woman's pussy wet. And that's the honest truth. I believe if a woman gives me at least 2 to 3 minutes to talk dirty to her, I believe I can get any woman's pussy wet. And my track record of sexual successful women, and more specifically casual sex successful women, has proved that. So that's one book I highly recommend. As a Man Thinketh, So Is He. Again, it's not even that long or that thick. It's a very thin book. But again, I gave you the general essence of the book. The general essence is whatever belief system you adopt, whatever set of attitudes that you acknowledge as valid in your own mind, that's going to determine how your life unfolds. If you constantly say to yourself, I'm never going to be rich, guess what? You won't. You won't. You'll never be rich. If you say to yourself, I'm never going to lose weight, I'm going to always be fat for the rest of my life, guess what? You will be fat for the rest of your life. Because that's what you believe. Because that's what you believe. And again, if you're one of these whiny, complaining types that says, oh man, all women ain't shit. All women are not worth marrying. Guess what? You'll never get married. Because that's your belief system. The other book I would recommend just as much, if not slightly more, just as much, if not slightly more, is a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And as the title suggests, he identifies certain behavioral characteristics and beliefs that people who live productive, effective, successful lives tend to maintain that other people don't. And here's this very detailed, this is a very detailed book. It covers a lot of ground. But here would be the general, at least one of the main messages of his book, is that he divides all of your activities in life into 3 categories. Direct control activities, indirect control activities, and no control activities. Direct control activities, indirect control activities, and no control activities. Start with direct control. Direct control activity, that's an activity where you have total control over the end result of that activity. You have total control over the end result of that activity. So for example, if you say to yourself, I'm going to eat healthy today, and you proceed to eat nothing but fruits, vegetables, and other healthy food, you had total control over what you eat. You have total control over what you put in your mouth. So that eating right would be a simple example of a direct control activity. Exercising. If you say, I'm going to do 10 push-ups, and you fall to the ground and do 10 push-ups, it was totally within your control to do 10 push-ups. So that would be another example of a direct control activity. What Currie says is the more you concentrate on direct control activities, the more power you develop. The more personal power you develop when you emphasize direct control activities. Just about all activities that relate to self-improvement and personal development would fall in the area of direct control activities. And you know I'm real big on self-improvement and personal development. That's why I'm a self-help guru. I'm real big on self-improvement and personal development. That's representative of direct control activity. That's what gives you, as Currie says, personal power. The second category, in which this relates to why I did this segue about these books, and I'm gonna go back to what I was talking about men back in my college days whining and complaining about women. Second category is what's known as indirect control activities. What is an indirect control activity? That's any activity that in order for you to get the result you want, it has to depend on 2 things. Either the cooperation of at least one other human being and or favorable circumstances. The cooperation of at least one other human being and or favorable circumstances. So, for example, if you're playing 5-on-5 basketball as opposed to 1-on-1 basketball, then in order to win that game, you're going to have to depend in part on your teammates. Like even Michael Jordan, as great as he was, he had to depend on his teammates' talents and athletic skills to help him win basketball games for the Chicago Bulls. So playing a team sport would be something that's representative of an indirect control activity. Me being a dating coach. And this is one of the reasons why I don't offer ironclad guarantees for men successful women. Because a lot of what determines whether a man is going to be successful with women is his own actions, his own behavior. It's not my actions and behavior. All I can do is equip my male clients with the knowledge, wisdom, insight, and expertise that I have. But I can't make my clients be successful with women. A lot of that is dependent on them. The only thing I can do is influence them. And that's what Currie calls indirect control activities. When you successfully accomplish a lot of your goals and objectives that fall in the category of indirect control, that means you have a high degree of influence. Like, if you can get other people to do what you want them to do, get them to say what you want them to say, get them to believe what you want them to believe, that means you have a high degree of influence. That comes from indirect control activities, influence. Direct control activities leads to personal power. Indirect control activities leads to influence. And then finally, there's no control activities. Simple example of that would be, let's say you lived in a city like Seattle, or a city that had, or Florida in recent weeks, that's had a lot of bad weather. And you just sat around complaining about, man, why is the weather so bad? Man, why are these hurricanes and thunderstorms and tropical storms and earthquakes? What's wrong with the world? What's wrong with my city? Why does it rain so much? Or you live in Chicago in the wintertime, you're like, damn, why is it always snowing? Why is it so cold? Why are you even talking about that shit? Can you control the weather? Can you in any way control the weather? Can you in any way even influence the weather? No. You have no direct control over the weather. You have no indirect influence over the weather. The weather is what it is, man. You got to deal with it or move to another city. But if you're going to stay in the city that you're complaining about the weather, you got to deal with that shit and shut the fuck up. You got to deal with that shit. So if you were whining and complaining about the weather, or you're whining and complaining about the behavior of people that you don't know personally, male or female, then you're engaging in no control activities. That's why I'm really against whining and complaining. That's a no control activity, man. If you're whining and complaining about stuff like the weather, or when it comes to dealing with people, if you're whining and complaining about people's behavior that you've never met them, people that don't even know you exist, that is a no control action. You have no control over those people's behavior. You have no influence over their behavior. If they don't know you, you don't have any influence over their behavior. Get it? Got it? Good. Now let's go back to what I was talking about when I was saying that there's always been men, ever since I was in college, who whine and complain about women. I was in a fraternity. So when we threw parties at our fraternity house, we typically got any woman to dance with us. You know, exceptions here and there, but generally, the guys who were in my fraternity, we got any woman to dance with us. And I would say to a lesser extent, guys who were in other fraternities, rival fraternities like Alpha Phi Alpha, Omega Psi Phi, Phi Beta Sigma. But if you were a guy on, now see, different college campuses are different. There's some college campuses where fraternities are not that big on the campus. They don't have much influence. But Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, my alma mater, is considered one of the top schools with a high degree of fraternity and sorority influence. Put it in more blunt terms, if you weren't some type of athlete or in a fraternity or sorority, you were generally considered a nobody. I mean, I hate to put it like that, but I'm just going to keep it real. That's the truth. If you weren't an athlete, a male or female athlete on campus, or you weren't in a fraternity or sorority, you were essentially considered a nobody. And so there would be a lot of guys who would come to our parties who weren't athletes and who weren't fraternity guys, that they would get no play from the women, man. They would end up just standing against the wall like all night. And And when you heard a lot of those guys leaving the party, you would just hear them complaining about the women, saying that all women are bitches, just like guys on YouTube now. They would be saying stuff like, oh man, all these women are bitches. They all stuck up hoes. That's what they would usually say, that they were either bitches or they would call them stuck up. They would say ain't nothing but a bunch of stuck up hoes in that party. Now, did I feel the same way? Or did any of my fraternity brothers feel the same way about these women? No. Why? Because we had influence. Influence. Let me give this analogy. I've used this analogy at least once, if not twice before. If you were a parent of at least one son or at least one daughter or both, let's say whenever you get with your friends, you talk about how spoiled your kids are and how your kids ain't shit. You're like, damn, my kids are so bad. Damn, they just won't do anything I say. They so spoiled. God, I can't stand my kids. They get on my damn nerves. Now, your friends might nod their head in agreement with you while they listening to you. But what do you think your friends are going to be saying to themselves in their mind and saying to your other friends behind your back? What are they going to be saying about you? What are they going to be saying about you? I can guarantee you what they're going to say. They're going to say that person has no influence over their own children. That person has no influence over their own children. See, when you have influence, that means people respect what you say. They respect either an order you give them, they respect advice you share with them, they respect your beliefs, your attitudes, and they look to generally emulate and imitate your behavior. That's what it means to have influence. When you have influence, again, that means people, if you give them an order, you tell them to do something, like a police officer tells you to pull over. And if a police officer pulls next to your car while you're driving and goes like this as if to say, pull over, and you do it, that means that police officer has influence over you. Because you're willing to do what they say. But if that same police officer was to go like this, as if saying, pull over, and you look at him like, man, get out of here. Fuck you. I'm going to keep driving over the speed limit if I feel like it. Fuck you, police officer. I don't give a damn what you say. That means that police officer don't have no influence. That means you don't respect the order he's giving you. So that's the one thing that a sign that a person has influence is when you give people an order and they do it. Number one, when it comes to somebody giving you advice, which is something I do as a dating coach. When somebody shares their knowledge, wisdom, insight to you, gives you general advice, and you're willing to adhere to that person's advice, that means that person has influence. You're willing to adhere to that person's advice. Third sign a person has influence is when, I forgot that quick. Oh, is when you, when a person looks to emulate to some degree, emulate your behavior. Like they kind of look at you as kind of an idol of theirs, an icon of theirs. And they want to emulate. Like I emulated a lot of what I saw in John Leslie's character of Jack in the movie Talk Dirty to Me and Talk Dirty to Me Part 2. That means he had influence over me. He had influence over my behavior because I was willing to emulate aspects of his behavior. As you know, he was my first inspiration for being more one with women, was when I saw the character of Jack played by John Leslie in Talk Dirty to Me and Talk Dirty to Me Part 2. Yeah, when I first started being more one, that's what I was essentially doing. I was essentially just emulating John Leslie's behavior as Jack in those two movies. There was a fourth one, and now I never forgot it that quick. When people do what you say, when people listen to your advice, when people are willing to emulate you and imitate your behavior. There was a fourth thing in that. Damn, I hate when I lose my train of thought. There was a fourth aspect of influence that now, for some reason, I can't remember. Well, since I can't remember, I would say just the fourth most thing would just be simply that you treat that person with a high degree of deference and respect. You treat that person with a high degree of deference and respect. Those are signs that a person has influence. See, again, I keep giving Big Mike that for his simple comment about some guys got it like that and some guys don't. And what I always talk about early in this conversation, I talked about how women react differently to alpha males and beta males. See, here's the deal, man. Using that parent analogy, if any parent you knew, either father of children or mother of children, was always whining about how disobedient their kids were, you might think you're making an indictment on your kids' behavior, but you're really making an indictment on your own behavior. Because what you're saying is, I don't have any influence over my children's behavior. My children don't respect me. That's what you're essentially saying. That's what you're essentially saying. And in that very first video, when I went after guys for whining and complaining, that's one of the points I made across. I said, when you do a lot of whining and complaining of women, what you're telling me as a man is that you've never really had any influence over women. That's what you're telling me. You've never really had any influence. That's why I say, all you guys who whine and complain about women, but then turn around and say, well, but I got to let you know, Alan, I'm still a ladies' man in my own right, or I'm still a womanizer in my own right. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. That's like somebody bitching about their kids and then still saying, well, I got to let you know, I'm still a good father, though. I'm still a good mother, though. My kids still respect me as their mother or their father, though. No, they don't. No, they don't. Because if your kids really respected you as their mother or father, then that would mean they would do damn near everything you told them to do. If they were exhibiting bad behavior, when you told them to stop, they would stop. The fact that they don't obey your commands means they don't respect you. They don't consider you as having influence. So how can you turn around and suggest that you're a good parent? Dude, let me break it down. And speaking of Mac City, I'm going to bring up Tony Maceo's line. He teased me. He said, Alan Roger Currie, sometimes you have this way of saying things, either intentionally or unintentionally, where it comes across like you rubbing your balls in men's face, basically saying I'm bragging on myself or boasting on myself. But I'm going to quote Michael Jordan early in his career. Michael Jordan was being interviewed one time on television in the Chicago area. And he was talking about how many people he dunked on in a recent game. I think he dunked on like 2 or 3 people at the same time. And the host of this show in Chicago kind of lightheartedly teased him, said, well, Michael, don't you think you're doing some bragging right now? Don't you think you're being boastful right now? And I never forget this. I've quoted Michael Jordan many times on this quote. He said something that I agree with under the category of boasting or bragging. He said, no. He said, bragging or boasting is when you're telling people what you're capable of doing in the future. What you're capable of doing. He said, that's bragging, that's boasting. So he said, if I was to say, I guarantee you 2 weeks from now in a game, I'm going to dunk on 3 people. He said, that's boasting. Because you're talking about what you're capable of doing in the future. He said, if you're talking about what you've already done, he said, that's just me giving you an account of my personal history. Boom! Drop the mic. Drop the mic. Drop the mic on that one. Kudos to Michael Jordan. I wholeheartedly agree with that shit. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like, I've had a lot of guys who listen to some of my audio podcasts and my video podcasts here on YouTube will say to me, Alan, you know, even guys who like me, they'll say, Alan, I like you, but you do a lot of boasting about yourself. You do a lot of bragging about yourself. No. Again, going along the lines of Michael Jordan's comment, when I'm telling you about shit I already did, that's not boasting. I'm giving you an account of my personal history for the specific purpose of highlighting and reinforcing my credibility as a dating coach and, in most cases, a verbal seduction coach. That's what I'm doing, and I've mentioned that before. It's not my intention to brag. I'm highlighting and reinforcing my degree of credibility as a dating coach and more specifically a verbal, because if you remember one of my early videos, what's one of the number one things I proclaimed to my listening audience? I said, there's a lot of areas to do with my personality that I generally tend to maintain some degree of humility and modesty. There's a lot of areas that I maintain some degree of humility and modesty. But I said, I remember this, it was like in my third or fourth video. I said, if there's at least one area where I have almost no modesty at all, is when it comes to my verbal seduction skills and my ability to talk dirty to women and get their pussies wet. I don't have any modesty in that area. I don't. If people have a problem with that, so be it. I've told you before, I believe I'm the baddest motherfucker walking the earth when it comes to talking dirty to a woman, particularly talking dirty to a woman in the very first conversation. I literally don't believe there's another motherfucker walking the face of this motherfucking earth that's badder than me in that area. And you want to know what I use to back that up? Because I believe if a motherfucker was badder than me in that area, he would come out with a book declaring himself as badder than me. Who has done that? Put their name in my comment section. Who's written a book saying that they're a badder verbal seducer than me and they badder, more proficient at talking dirty to women than me? Shit, my nickname is the king of verbal seduction. The king of verbal seduction. I don't believe any man is better at talking dirty to women than me and getting their pussy wet in the very first conversation than me. No man. I'm cocky and egotistical enough to say that. I don't believe there's no man walking on earth that's better than me in that area. And I said in one of my early videos that that's one area I have no modesty in. Now on it back to the subject of influence. Why would a man who has a high degree of influence ever be tempted to get on an audio podcast or a video podcast and whine and complain about women? Why? Explain that to me in my comment section. Why any man who has a high degree of influence over women would have any temptation to whine and complain about women? Let me tell you something. Speaking of my verbal seduction skills, I invite a lot of you to go back and listen to some of my archive episodes of my Blog Talk Radio show. Matter of fact, I'll give you at least one episode you should listen to. If no other episode, at least one, if not two. No, I'll give you 2 episodes you should listen to. And they both happened in the same season, my last season, the 2015-2016 season. That was my 9th and final season. I'll give you at least 2 episodes you should listen to that will validate what I'm talking about. One is an interview with a woman named JoLynn Clemens. JoLynn Clemens. J-O space L-Y-N-N space C-L-E-M-O-N-S. I'll put the link in my comment section. Matter of fact, I'll put both links to the shows I'm going to highlight in my comment section so you don't have to search for them on Google. My interview with JoLynn Clemens and my interview with Leslie Love. In my interview with JoLynn Clemens, I played some audio clips from other interviews I had with women that I ended up having very X-rated, sexually explicit conversations. Do you know that at least 3/4 of the women that I interviewed in my 9 months on Blog Talk Radio told me either during the show or right after my interview with them that I was the very first guy to ever get them to have an X-rated or triple X-rated conversation in the very first conversation. Yep. I would say no less than 3 out of every 4 women that I interviewed told me that. They said, Alan, you were the very first. And a lot of these women were married. A lot of these women were either married, engaged to be married, or at minimum they had a long-term boyfriend. Like I had one well-known psychiatrist. This one, I can't remember her name. She's a well-known psychiatrist. She's like nationally known. She's had like best-selling books. She told me after the interview, she said, Alan, do you know how many years? She didn't say weeks. She didn't say months. She said years. She said, do you know how many years it took my husband to get me to use the word fucking instead of making love? She said, it took my husband years to get me to say the word fucking for having sex instead of making love. It took you one conversation. She said, it took you one conversation to get me to use the word fucking. I had a lot of women tell me that I interviewed on my show. They said, Alan, you were the first guy to ever get me to use words like fucking or phrases like sucking dick or licking pussy. I never used those type of words or phrases. Some women would say I never use those words and phrases, period. And other women would say I definitely don't use those words and phrases in the first conversation with someone or out in public. What does that show you? That shows you the bad motherfucker that I am. That's what it shows you. The bad motherfucker that I am. I told you a story on one of my earlier video podcasts and on my Blog Talk Radio show. I told you a couple stories about how, dude, I don't want to recount these stories because I've told them by now a few times, but there was one sister that lived in Chicago. I was going to hire her for a speaking engagement. This chick was married, man. She was married. I called her in my second conversation with her. She didn't tell me she was married in the first conversation. I didn't find out until the second conversation. But in the second conversation, I had this woman calling me sir. Let me repeat that. I had a married woman calling a man that she had never met in person. I had her referring to me as sir. She didn't even refer to her own husband as sir. This woman showed me more deference and respect over the phone than she did her own fucking husband. Let that sink in for a while. Let that sink in, and you wonder why I'm a BDSM dominant. That women pay me and why guys pay me to train their wives, girlfriends, and fiancés. You wonder why I'm in that position. When her husband was talking to her on the phone, she was talking to him like he was her son. She was like, go sit down. Get away from me. Go sit down. With me, she was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I told the husband directly over the phone. I said, I'm going to make your wife go in her bedroom and play with her pussy for me. I told him that on the phone. I told him that. I said, dude, I'm going to make your wife go in the bedroom and play with her pussy for me. And all he did was grumble. He said, oh, motherfucker, you crazy. Fuck you, man. Fuck you. And he got off the phone. And what did she do? She went in the bedroom and played with her pussy for me. What type of motherfucker gets that response from women? A motherfucker with a high degree of influence, motherfuckers. Influence. What Currie talked about, personal power, the second category, personal influence. That comes from influence, man. And I know some of y'all saying, damn, Tony Macy was like, damn, Alan rubbing his balls in their faces. Some of the other guys are like, damn, he bragging and boasting on himself. If you want to perceive it that way, so be it. I'm just recounting, I'm telling you, as Michael Jordan would say, I'm giving you an account of my personal history. Just a few weeks ago, man, I was doing a Skype consultation with a couple. I mentioned many times on my video podcast. Again, to reiterate, to let you know the type of level of influence I have, men pay me money. And before some of you say, oh, I bet you those are all white guys. I don't see no brother doing that. At least 30% of my couple clients are black. No less than roughly 30% of my couple clients are black. At least no less than 40% of my individual female clients that I do BDSM training and polyamory consulting with are black. So, because I remember I had these two sisters interview me about a year ago, and they immediately said, oh, I bet you all of your female clients are white women. And I said, okay, you can believe that if you want to. But anyway, now this particular couple I'm referring for this particular story, they were not black, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, this shows you my influence. The woman during the Skype video consultation, she was talking back to her husband, like in a really like sassy, disrespectful manner. And I said, yo, I said, obey your husband. Show your husband respect. Well, I'm going to encourage him to divorce your ass. Show him right now. Apologize to him right now. What did she say to me immediately? She said, yes, sir. Did she give me any back talk? No. She immediately said, yes, sir. And then she acted more respectfully to her husband. Would a motherfucker who ain't got no influence be able to pull that off? To my haters and critics, influence, bitches. Influence right here, bro. This is a motherfucker. You listening to a motherfucker that got influence. Influence. That's why I don't need to whine and complain about women's behavior. Influence. Women generally do the fuck what I tell them to do. They say what I tell them to say. Dude, I always reference the old man. And I was going to try to get through this video podcast without referencing him, but I just got to reference him just in this minor way. Well, number one, he's always the guy who tries to get me to co-sign with his criticisms of women, and particularly black women. He wants me to do whining and complaining with him. But speaking of a time when he even raised his eyebrows, well, I don't know if he literally, because I wasn't there with him. I just heard him over the phone. But I could tell his eyebrows were raised. I forget what we were talking about, but somehow I got to talk about my Facebook groups. Because, like, as you know, if you follow me on Facebook, I have a Facebook group for men. And at 2 points, I had a Facebook group also for women. Matter of fact, at some points, my Facebook group for women actually had a larger membership than my Facebook groups for men, which I find ironic because I'm not a dating coach for women. I'm a dating coach for men. But the first group I had was between 2009 and 2011. And then Facebook closed it down because they changed their group format. But the first group I had between 2000, oh, I know what we were talking about. There's a YouTuber named Sophia A. Nelson. Somebody I've had a verbal battle with and somebody that the old man has had many verbal battles with. And I was mentioning that I said it's interesting that Sophia A. Nelson would take a jab at me because she used to be in my Facebook group. And the old man was like, really? She was in your Facebook group? I said, yeah. I said, matter of fact, I had 600 women. At one point, I had 600 women in my Facebook group. And I said, probably 60% of those women were black. And the old man was like, are you serious? He was like, really? I said, yeah. And he said, how many guys were in the group? I said, no, it was just me. He tripped the fuck out on that. He tripped the fuck out on that. He was just like, he actually got silent for a couple of seconds. He was like, damn. He said, you had a Facebook group where you were the only man in the group and it was 600 women? I was like, yeah. And he just went, damn. Why do you think he said damn like that? Why do you think he said damn? It relates to what I'm talking about. I don't want to put words in his mouth because he didn't say these exact words, but I know people's responses and why they have a certain type of response. The way he said damn was basically his way of saying, damn, Alan, you got a lot of influence over women. That was what he was essentially saying. Now, again, he didn't say that verbatim, but that's essentially what he said with that response. He was like, damn, Alan, you're a brother who's had a lot of influence over women. I don't know too many brothers who could have 600 women in their group with just them. Because if you notice, most groups on Facebook that have a bunch of women, and say particularly a bunch of black women, it's a mix of men and women. It ain't just one brother in six. Yeah, between 2009 and 2011, now the numbers would fluctuate week to week, so I can't say it was a consistent 600 for 2 years. It would fluctuate by a few people, but my highest number I remember reaching, my group had 600 women. Then they closed the group because they changed their format. Then I had a second group. When I opened up my second group of women, I had from, I think, 2013 to 2016, I closed up my second group just last summer. Around May of 2016 is when I closed my second group. I had as many as 450 women in my second group. It was just me and 450 women. And I would say 3/4 of those women were black women. A lot of these women were married women. They were women who were engaged to be married, women who had long-term boyfriends. Man, here's to show you the sexually duplicitous side of women. I had women in that group who were married, engaged to be married, or had boyfriends. Guess what they would ask me? And to some of you guys, it won't surprise you, but guess what they would ask me? They would say, Alan, show us a picture of your big dick. We heard you got a big dick. Show us a picture of your big dick. I'm not even making that up. Women would literally, I ain't talking about just the single women, the married women who were in my group and the women who had boyfriends would be in that group saying, Alan, post a picture of your dick. We want to see how big your dick is. So I obliged them. I did. I had dick in my second group. I didn't do that with my first group. But in my second group, yeah, man, I had pictures of my dick and shit in there, man. Women was writing me all the time, wanted me to have phone sex with them and shit. I had one woman, she sent me a video of her playing with her pussy, and her husband was in the very next room. Her husband was in the very next room, and she sent me a video of her playing with her pussy. Now, I know what that's making a lot of you guys say. Damn, see, this brings you back to the original point, Alan. You're just verifying, you're just validating the fact that women ain't about shit. This is why we're doing our whining and complaining. Because women ain't shit. Why would a woman who's married be playing with her pussy for you on video with her husband in the next room? That you're just confirming what we're saying, Alan. Don't you realize that? You're confirming the fact that women ain't shit. How come you don't get on women's case, and more specifically black women's case, the way you get on our case? Why don't you get on their case the way you get on our case? I've answered that question before. Why do you think I don't really get on women's case? At least not here on my video. Why do you think I don't get on women's case on my videos? What's the simple answer to that? Oh, I went over an hour. I said I wasn't going to go over an hour. All right, see, that's why I got to quit that predicting the length shit. I did it again. Oop, burp, number 1 and 2. I am a men's dating coach. I am a men's dating coach. Why would I address the flaws and weaknesses of women's behavior when I'm not a women's dating coach? Well, to a lesser extent I am. Like I said, I work with women and couples when it comes to both the BDSM lifestyle and the polyamory lifestyle. Polyamory meaning simply open relationships or open marriages. That's where I work with women and couples, is when it comes to stuff related to BDSM and polyamory. Now, speaking of that, quick note on that. Remember how I talked about me emulating John Leslie? I mentioned, I think, in one previous video podcast that I hooked up with some of my frat brothers from college about a year ago. Yeah, it was roughly just under a year ago. And a handful of my frat brothers, my younger frat brothers, would tease me because they said, they used to call me AC. I didn't use my middle name much in college. So a lot of my frat brothers, my nickname was AC. They said, AC, you know the one thing we remember about you, man, in college? I said, what? They said, you used to have a lot of girls calling you sir. I don't know any other brother on campus that would have girls calling him sir like you did. Here's the kicker about that. When I was in college, I didn't even know about what is now known as the S&M or BDSM lifestyle. I didn't know about that. I really didn't. I didn't know what BDSM was until, I want to say, until this movie 9.5 Weeks came out. And I was reading the reviews of 9.5 Weeks. And they said this movie has BDSM connotations to it, or S&M undertones to it. That's when I think that movie came out in 1987 with Mickey Rourke and Kim Basinger. That was the first movie I watched that had BDSM elements to it. But where I got the idea for women to call me sir, you guessed it, John Leslie, man. John Leslie, I think it was in Talk Dirty to Me Part 2, which came out in, I think, 82 or 83. I think it was 83. He had this woman sucking his dick, and he pulled his dick out of her mouth, and then he started slapping her on the face with his dick, and then he said, here's what I want you to say. Say, excuse me, sir. May I please suck your dick, sir? And the woman said it. And I said, ooh, I got to steal that. Ooh, I was like, ooh, I got to steal that. And sure enough, I did. I started making women say that exact line. When women would be sucking my dick, I would take my dick out of my mouth. I would slap them on the face with it. And then I would say, before I let you put my dick back in your mouth, say, excuse me, sir. May I please suck your dick, sir? And they would say it. Then I would say, good girl, good or good bitch. And then I would put my dick back in their mouth. Yeah, man. Kudos to John Leslie, man. I love that dude, man. Again, talking about influence. If there's one man who had a lot of influence over my verbally seductive demeanor and my overall verbal seduction skills and talk dirty skills, it was John. I don't know if I want to say John Leslie himself, or more specifically, John Leslie's character, fictional character of the womanizer Jack in Talk Dirty to Me and Talk Dirty to Me Part 2. Again, when I first started being more women, that's who I was essentially emulating. I was emulating John Leslie as Jack. Because Jack, that character of Jack, he was a master verbal seducer. He was a master verbal seducer, man. Even though some people argue, well, it was fiction, so it was written for him to be a master verbal seducer. But I proved, if anything, I proved that his verbal seduction skills worked in real life. I proved that with all my seductions with women, that his verbal seduction skills work in real life. Art imitates life, life imitates art. But yeah, man, the reason why I spend 90% of my time admonishing men, criticizing men, showing tough love to men is because most of my clients are men. I can guarantee you, if I was a dating coach for women, it would be just the opposite. It would be just the opposite. Right now, I can guarantee you, if I was a dating coach for women, if I promoted myself as a dating coach for women, you would hardly ever hear me criticizing men. You would hardly ever hear me criticizing men. I just wouldn't. I guarantee you I wouldn't. That's when you would never hear me criticizing men. Like even the few female clients I deal with right now as my BDSM clients. When I have training sessions with my female clients, I don't talk about the flaws and weaknesses of men's behavior. If you were to talk to any of my female clients, they'll tell you that. I don't talk about the flaws and weaknesses of men's behavior. I concentrate all my attention on what these women are doing wrong, which is usually they're too defiant, too disrespectful, too stubborn-headed, and not feminine enough. So when I work with my female clients, I concentrate on their behavior. I don't concentrate on men's behavior. I don't discuss men's behavior at all. See, here's the problem, and then I'm going to wrap up because this is getting too lengthy now. Here's the problem with a lot of you men who do all this whining and complaining about women. You want to know not only why you're doing this whining and complaining and why you're trying to recruit and persuade other men to co-sign with you like me, like the old man has repeatedly tried to get me to co-sign with his harsh criticism of women. See, the old man ain't got no influence over women. He ain't got no influence over women. And I say that about all these male podcasters, white, black, otherwise, who do all this whining and complaining about women. They don't have no influence over women. What's the most telling sign that they don't have influence? The fact that they got to repeat themselves. The fact that they got to repeat the same criticisms and complaints over and over and over and over and over again. That's the telltale sign they don't have no influence. How many times you think my father had to tell me to clean my room? If you know when I talk about my mother and father and the type of influence they had over me. Now my mother, bless her heart, sometimes my mother would have to tell me and my brother to clean our room 2 times, 3 times, maybe even 4 or 5 times before we finally get around to cleaning. If my father as much as looked at me with an expression of, son, you better go in that goddamn room and clean it, I was in my room cleaning my fucking room. You think my father ever had to tell me twice to clean my room? Do you really? Do you think my father ever, in the existence of our relationship, ever had to tell me twice to clean my room? Fuck no. Fuck no. If my father said, son, do XYZ, I did XYZ like that. If my father said, stop doing ABC, I stopped doing ABC like that. Because my father had my respect. He had a high degree of influence. See, man, I tried to give these guys a tip. These guys think I'm hard on them all the time. I try to give them a tip. I'm going to give you guys this tip. This is not a new tip. This is a tip I've given before. But I'll close on this, man. Here's what you got to understand about women. Here's what you got to understand about women. And this actually relates to my father. I was just talking about my father. If you read my book, Ooh Say It Again, or listen to the audiobook version of Ooh Say It Again, what's one of the biggest things I said there? Of all of my pieces of advice, there's one piece of advice that resonated, that a lot of people took attention to, caught people's attention. I said, pussy attracts pussy. Just like a lot of people say that with money. A lot of people say the more money you have, the more opportunities for greater wealth will come your way. That's been said for decades. The simple way people say is money attracts money. The more elaborate way, they'll say the more money you have, typically the more opportunities for greater wealth will come your way. I'm going to tell you something if you don't know this already. It's the same concept with women. I dare any woman, because I know I have a lot of women who listen to my video podcast. I even have quite a few women who are bold enough to post in my comments. Now, I will say, I've said this multiple times. Most women who listen to me, they rarely give me public feedback. Rarely. Every now and then, yeah. There's a handful of women that do. Most women, I get most of my female feedback privately. That's where I get most of my female feedback, is privately. But I have some women, I have maybe like 3, 4, 5 women on average that give me regular or semi-regular feedback in my conversation. But I dare anyone. Here's why I'm going to challenge you women. I usually challenge men on something. I'm going to challenge you women. I dare you women to disagree with me. I dare you to disagree with me on this point. Women play off of other women. What do I mean by that? Again, this goes back to my thing I'm emphasizing, influence. So here's the thing with women, man. When women see that you have a high degree of influence over other women and that you solicit a high degree of respect from other women, that's when they're more likely to follow your lead. Like I was talking about my BDSM female clients. Guess how I get most of my BDSM female clients? I don't get it by just basic advertising and marketing. I get probably 80 to 90% of my clients from referrals from other women. Referrals from other women. Yeah, I would say roughly no less than 84 out of every 5. Matter of fact, just this week, I mentioned this in my very last podcast. I said later on this week, I'm getting ready to work with 2 new female clients as BDSM clients. Both of them came from a referral from other women. Both of them came from a referral from other women. If I had to give one woman a shout out, her name is Taylor Jones. She was a former guest on my show. She refers a lot of women to me, so I'm going to give her a shout out. Taylor Jones. She gives me a lot of referrals. Yeah, a good percentage of my female clients actually came directly from her. She was a former guest on my show. She gives me a lot of, matter of fact, I was talking about my black female, I say my black female client. I don't know about my total female clients because I don't think she's giving me too many of my non-black referrals. But my black female referrals, I would say no, at least 50 to 60% of my black female referrals came directly from Taylor Jones. And I get a lot of white female referrals. But anyway, back to my point. My own mother acknowledged this. My own late mother acknowledged this. When we had a conversation one time when I was in my 20s. See, my father, man, I had older people tell me about my father, man. It's always interesting when you hear your father's friends and peers share stories about them when they were young like you, or your mother's friends and peers share stories about them. Like the movie, that's why I love the movie Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox, where he goes back in time and he gets to hang with his parents when they're young like him. Anyway, yeah, my mother told me straight up. She said a lot of women wanted to hook up with your father. I said, oh, really? I said, so Dad was a ladies' man. She said, oh, yeah. She said, number one, your dad was considered very intelligent. And I hear that from people all the time. Anytime I talk to people who grew up with my father, who either went to high school with him, college with him, or know him otherwise, the first characteristic they always bring up about my father is his level of intelligence. Everybody's like, man, oh, man, your father, Clarence Currie, that dude was one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life. That dude was incredibly intelligent. He might have been the most intelligent guy I know. And that's not just me giving biased compliments to my father, but yeah, almost everybody who knew my father, if they praise him on just one thing and one thing only, is his intelligence. Everybody said, man, your father was super intelligent. Your father was intelligent as hell. Honestly, sometimes my father used to talk to me when we get into a really deep conversation. A lot of stuff he would say, truthfully, would just go over my head, dude. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna even lie. I would never purport to suggest that my level of intelligence is on the same level as my father's. My father was an ultra deep dude, man. His vocabulary was much more extensive than mine, much more. I mean, he used words that I would always have to look up in the dictionary and the thesaurus to know what they meant. Because he was thorough. My father was intellectually thorough. Next to being intelligent, though, my mother said he was also handsome. And I've seen pictures of my father when he was young. He was a good-looking guy. So my mother was like, the fact that he was a combination of handsome and intelligent, and people knew he had a fairly good career ahead of him, she said a lot of women was after him. She said, what made me first pay attention to your father was when I saw other women paying attention to him. What did she say? She said the first thing that made me pay attention to your father was when I noticed that other women were paying attention to your father. Dog, I'm telling you, women play off of other women, dude. If women see that you have influence with other women and you solicit a high degree of respect from other women, that's when women are more likely to adhere to your influence and give you respect. Simple example. Let's say you got two guys that walk into the club. And one guy is a handsome guy. He seems pretty confident. Seems to have a certain degree of swag about him, sex appeal about him. And say the first few women who see him look at him like, I'd give him some pussy. Women will take notice to those first few women giving them attention, and they will find themselves saying, I'd give him some pussy too. But let's say there's another guy who comes in looking just raggedy and corny, basically, for lack of a better word, just looks like a loser. And the first few women will look at him and go, ew, well, ooh, who would sleep with him? That's going to make all the other women, when they see those women's reaction, they're going to have the same reaction. Women play off of other women's reaction to men. I've known that for years. Women play off of other women's reaction. Why do you think politicians always want to do rallies that show them gaining a high degree of support from the people at the rally? Why do you think that is? Why do you think politicians do that? Why do you think talk show hosts, I'm a man who worked in the entertainment industry, when a talk show is going to go live, they have somebody come out and get the audience real riled up to the point where they'll start giving the host of the talk show a bunch of applause. Why do you think they do that? Like I used to work on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. They would always want the crowd to go crazy when Jay Leno came out. Why do you think that is? You think that's just something random by accident? People play off of other people's reaction to people, man. I'll say both male and female, but particularly women do this. People play off of other people's reaction to people, man. I would compare it to stocks. Most people start paying attention to a stock when they see other people taking notice to that stock, and that's what makes the price of that stock rise. Usually it starts out with a small group of people paying attention to a stock, and then other people pay attention to those small group of people paying attention to that stock, and that's what shoots the price up. On the flip side, when people see that other people are having a negative reaction to a stock, they tend to develop a negative reaction to that stock, which causes the price of the stock to go down. That's Wall Street 101. I'm telling you, man, it's the same thing with women, man. It's the same thing with women. And how it relates to my points in this video is that if women see that you have no influence with other women, why would they ever listen to anything you say? See, that's why, again, to mention the old man again, as well as some other guys, why do you think the old man, remember I asked the question, I didn't really answer it. Remember in my very last video, I asked the question, I invited you to give me feedback, which a lot of guys did, and I'm appreciative of that. I asked you, I said, why doesn't the old man just stand on his own criticisms of women, and particularly black women? Why does he keep trying to bait me into co-signing with it? Why does he make statements like, Alan Roger Currie needs to say the same things I'm saying? Alan Roger Currie needs to co-sign with what I'm saying. Alan Roger Currie needs to develop the balls and the courage to express the same truth that I'm expressing. Why is it so important for him to get me to join with him in his criticism of women? There's a lot of answers that are pretty valid answers, but if I had to give you the most simplest answer is, the old man knows that I have more influence with women than he does. He knows that. He knows that. He knows that I generally have more influence with women than he does. Old man could never get 600 women in a Facebook group with him. Are you serious? I doubt if he could get 60 women in a Facebook group with him. Let alone 600. You think the old man could have a show like the Erotic Conversationalist? Come on, man. Are you serious? You think the old man could get a woman to play with her pussy, multiple women to play with their pussies on live talk radio? Come on, man. I ain't trying to insult the brother, but I'm just keeping shit real, like I always do. I'm keeping shit real. Old man ain't got the type of influence over women that I do. He don't have the type of influence over women that I do. And that's why he wants me, that's the very simple reason why he wants me to co-sign with his criticisms. Because then his criticisms would gain more credibility. His criticisms and insults towards women would gain more credibility and validity if he's able to say, not only do I feel this way, but a handsome, charming, seductive motherfucker like Alan Roger Currie feels the same way too. That's what he wants to be able to say. He wants to be able to say, not only do I feel that black women are this, and black women are that, and black women are this, and black women are that, but a handsome, smooth, verbally seductive motherfucker like Alan Roger Currie, a guy who's gotten a lot of pussy in his life, he feels the same exact way towards black women that I do. Right? If he was able to say that, right there, that would give him his criticisms and assertions and commentary 10 times more credibility than it has. But see, if the only guys on YouTube who complain about women are guys who have no history of being a ladies' man, no history of being a womanizer, and no history of having a significant amount of influence over women's behavior, then what credibility do their criticisms really have? What credibility do their criticisms really have? They don't have any, other than among other men who feel the same way. Other whiny and complaining men. That's the only people right now, like the old man, the only people that his criticisms have credibility with is other men who are romantically and sexually frustrated with women. Other men who feel like black women ain't shit. That's the only guys that his commentary has credibility with. But his criticisms don't have any credibility with any women. And they don't have any credibility with men who are ladies' man womanizer types. Simple. Personal power. Influence. Whiny, complaining, worry. Read. I'm telling you. I know a lot of you young brothers don't like to read these days. I got on y'all case about that about 2 or 3 videos ago. But if you are the type that likes to read good books, particularly self-help books, I would say, you know, even some of my haters and critics, if y'all not willing to read my books, y'all need to read 2 books. James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, Stephen Covey, Dr. Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Those are two, again, I would rank, for me personally, those are my 2 favorite self-help books of all time. 2 self-help books of all time. Again, the gist of As a Man Thinketh is, whatever your belief system is, whatever your set of attitudes is, that's going to determine how your life unfolds. That's going to determine how your life unfolds. And again, as it relates specifically to dating and relationships, if you go through life repeatedly saying to yourself, all women ain't shit, then all women ain't going to be shit. It's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what's known as a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what it's going to be. Your life is going, as it relates to women, is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because even if you run across a woman that's considered a quality woman, you're going to ignore her or look past her because your belief system tells you that all women ain't shit. So it's impossible for that quality woman to be about anything because your belief system is all women ain't shit. As a Man Thinketh, so is he. Second book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's a multitude of messages and pieces of advice in that book. It's not just a one-note book. But the biggest message in that book is the difference between recognizing when you're involved in direct control activities, indirect control activities, and no control activities. A mastery of direct control activities is what leads to personal power. A mastery of direct control activities is what leads to personal power. That's why I put so much emphasis on self-improvement and personal development. Self-improvement and personal development. A mastery of indirect control activities is what leads to influence. 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 Again, the signs that you have influence, number 1 is simply when people do what you tell them to do and say what you tell them to say. That's the number 1 sign you got influence. Is when people do what you tell them to do and they say, like, you know, one of my favorite seductive phrases is when I'm talking to women, I'll say, ooh, say it again. And they'll say it again. Whatever I tell them to say, they'll say it again. That represents that I have influence. If you tell a woman to say XYZ and she quickly, without hesitation, says XYZ, that means you have influence. When you tell a woman to do XYZ and she immediately does it without resistance or without back talk, that means you have influence. She respects your influence. Number 2 sign of influence is when people are willing to adhere to your advice. When you offer people words of wisdom and or advice, they're willing to take heed to your knowledge, wisdom, and advice. That's the second sign that you have influence. Like, I wouldn't be able to be a successful dating coach if I didn't have influence over a high number of single heterosexual men. I wouldn't be able, I would be out of business. If I had a less than average degree of influence, and this is why I always emphasize credibility, because credibility, you could say, is the precursor or prerequisite for influence. That's why I always highlight and reinforce my degree of credibility. Because nobody's going to listen to your advice if you don't have any credibility and you don't have any influence. They're just not. They're going to be like, oh, he don't know what the fuck he's talking about. People got to feel like you know what you're talking about. Even more so, my male clients need to know that I have a track record of my advice helping other men solve problems. So that's the number 2 sign. Next to doing what a person tells you to do or say what they tell you to say, the next sign of influence is when people are willing to listen to your advice. And the third and final thing is when people are very tempted to emulate and or imitate your personality traits, your behavior traits. When people are willing to imitate and emulate your personality traits and your behavior traits, that means you have a high degree of influence over that person. Like when Michael Jackson was at the height of his fame, he used to wear that glittery glove. You remember that? And all his fans across the world start also wearing a glittery glove. They wanted to emulate him because he had a lot of influence, man. He had a lot of influence. Most celebrities like Kobe Bryant tried to emulate Michael Jordan in his basketball playing because he had Michael Jordan as one of his idols. So he tried to emulate a lot of his moves. And yeah, when you have influence over people, one of the things they'll do, particularly members of the same sex, is they're going to try to emulate you and imitate what you do. I did that. Again, John Leslie, it would be the one person when it came to verbal seduction that I attempted to emulate. When I watched Talk Dirty to Me and Talk Dirty to Me Part 2, I said, I'm going to become that guy in real life. That's what I said to myself. I said, I'm going to become just like the character of Jack in real life. And I did. Think about it. I did. And my brother and my close friends are witnesses to that. I did. I became the real life Jack from Talk Dirty to Me and Talk Dirty to Me Part 2. I've had a lot of real life experiences that were just like some of his experiences in those two movies. Just from my talk dirty skills and my verbal seduction skills. So that's when you know you have influence. And then finally, when you engage, when you invest a lot of time in no control activities, what's going to be the end result? It's going to be one of two things: worrying and whining and complaining. That's what Stephen Covey talks about. Worrying and whining and complaining. That's the two most things you're going to do when you engage in no control activities. Is you're going to end up worrying about shit that you have no control over, and you're going to end up whining and complaining about shit that you have no control over. And as it relates to dating relationships and men dealing with women, the worst thing you could be doing is whining and complaining about women. I could halfway see you whining and complaining about women that you're currently interacting with, like say, for example, your current wife, your current fiance, your current girlfriend, or even to a lesser extent, your ex-wife, your ex-fiance, your ex-girlfriend, or former casual sex partners. I can halfway see you every now and then whining and complaining about those women because you've actually interacted with those women. And I've said that in video podcasts before. I don't come down too hard on guys who are complaining about women that they've actually interacted with face to face at least a few times. But when you're on YouTube and you're whining and complaining about women you never ever interacted with, what is that about? What is that about? That's a fucking waste of your motherfucking time. You know how I feel about wasting motherfucking time. That is a waste of your motherfucking time. Those women ain't gonna listen to anything you got to say. Those women don't give a fuck about you. The only people who care about your whiny complaints is other men who like to express whiny complaints. That's the only people who care about your whiny complaints. Is other men who are romantically and sexually frustrated who care about your whiny complaints. Period. Hashtag. It's going to be long. It's going to be long. So if you're willing to write this in my comment section, it's going to be long. Direct control activities lead to, and you can use the number 2 instead of TO, to lead to personal power. Direct control activities lead to personal power. That's my hashtag. All right, in about 2 to 3 hours, I'm going to do another Patreon exclusive video. It's not going to be that long. It's going to be simply around opening up a woman who's with at least one other person, as opposed to opening a conversation with a woman who's by herself. Opening up a conversation with a woman who's accompanied by at least one other person, if not multiple people. That's going to be my Patreon exclusive video. All right. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, king. Oh, you're the fucking king. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
I bet the king would fuck me really good.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.